Kelvin's actually a smart man, and I think he's a very good a person who understands education. He's been a very good teacher. But I also think, Mr Speaker, that this bill is an idea whose time has not yet come. And I just want to talk about a few things. One in particular, it was my son's school interview today, and I managed to go along, saw my new teacher. She's a first-year teacher, just out of Teachers College. And lo and behold, my son's doing quite well. He's exceeding the standards, and I think that's great. He's a 7-year-old, he's performing at an 8 or 9-year-old. But given his wonderful mother, that doesn't surprise me. But, Mr Speaker, I think one of the issues we have here is that there are many other things that we're dealing with in terms of the education sector. And I think that one of the issues we're trying to deal with, I generally like voting for things that have got freedom in the title. I believe freedom should reign. But this is a bill which really, it's got some issues with it, and I think that we've had some particular issues pointed out by our prior speakers. I want to talk a little bit about Colorado. Louise Upson and I and a number of Labor members were actually in Colorado about 3 weeks ago. And we mentioned a senator there, and she was actually putting in place a bill which actually put in place performance-based pay in a way which is actually very unpopular in that state, and she pointed out some of the extreme problems that existed with implementing that policy in Colorado. I think, Mr Speaker, there is a lot to be learned from what those people are doing in America if this policy of Sir Roger is ever going to be adopted. And I encourage Sir Roger to go look at what's going on in Colorado and learn a bit about that. But this bill, I think, actually, I agree with Kelvin. I grew up in an environment where I went to a low decile school, and I agree that there would be some potential issues in low decile areas with this bill as drafted. And I think Sir Roger's intent is admirable and his meaning as well. But the reality is I think there will be a lot of problems in some areas, and we're not yet ready to take into account some of these things that Sir Roger wants to adopt. That's not to say that I don't agree with some of the concepts of what this thing could do. And as I say, there are lots of work to be done down the track. And I point to learning from international experience, particularly what Colorado are doing. They're looking at a role in many ways of, and I'll just sort of explain what they're doing there. Effectively what they're doing is they're cutting the bottom 5% of teachers and taking the money from those bottom 5% and giving it to the top 5%. So the top 5% of teachers get paid double what a normal performing teacher goes. Now, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's the right way to go, Mr Speaker, but I'm saying that's what one state in America is doing, and they're putting in place a trial of that to see how it operates. And I think, Mr Speaker, it will be a very interesting test to see the results, whether it works or not. And I think, Mr Speaker, learning from those examples of what works and what doesn't work with the reality of what Sir Roger's trying to achieve will be an interesting example and test case. I don't want New Zealand to be a test case for a policy like this, because I think there are some things that we're looking at. But I just want to talk to that member for a moment. National standards, I want to go through. My school that my son goes to, and my daughter will start in about a month's time, performs very well. They're doing very well, Ms Moroney. And I must say that those parents who are getting their reports are loving it. Because boys are one of the problems we have in the New Zealand education system. Boys are underperforming relative to girls in our education system, and that's one of the big problems we have in our tail. Our boys at a lower level are not performing in the way. National standards in itself, I agree with Kelvin, will not lift achievement in itself. But what it will do, it will identify those students who are doing well and actually do need some help. And I think I think that's a very positive thing. In some cases, we do know who those students are. In other cases, we do not, Mr Speaker. And what we have with the implementation of national standards will allow to identify not only those students that are doing well, but also those teachers that are doing well. And there are systems that are currently in place to reward teachers who are doing well and not doing well. I think those aren't necessarily the best ways in the long run to do. And as I say, I admire Sir Roger's attempt to put in place a system that he thinks that will deal with that problem. I don't think it'll do what he wants it to be done. And there may be better ways to do it. And there are other things that we're looking at. That I think time will come when a policy like this, we can learn from overseas experience on how to reward good teachers. We can learn from the experience of the likes of the Colorados of the world and other places around the world. But this bill, as it's drafted, I don't think will achieve what Sir Roger wants. I don't think it won't achieve what we want in government either. And I think that's actually a reason why we're completely voting against it, Mr Speaker. Time will come to a situation where we'll actually realise that having an ability of schools that don't have the ability to choose good or bad teachers in the current form of environment will actually put too much restrictions. Because I actually agree with Kelvin over there, Mr Davis over there. One of the issues actually is some schools do not have the ability to actually choose good teachers and bad teachers. Until we get those things right, until we know the right students, this bill won't be effective.